Hey guys, Brady here from Power Tongue. Hope you are doing well this cold and wintry day. I wanted to have a chat with you that's kind of personal. Let me take off this blanket because that is kind of weird looking. That's not some weird ceremonial robe or anything like that, if that's what you were thinking. It's just very cold. I wanted to chat with you about my background, like where I'm coming from as we're on this journey together, because things have gotten pretty crazy in my own spiritual awakening or whatever lingo you want to use for what's been going on in my own life. However, I'm still the same old guy that has been going through this incredible journey for 28 years now in this incarnation. Oh, another mystical buzzword there. Uh, the reality is, if you told me like maybe 5 years ago or whatever that I'd be like exploring esoteric traditions and astrology and tarot and the mystical teachings of the East and like the Bhagavad Gita and Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, this law of one, like channeled material from extraterrestrial entities, I would have laughed in your face or called you crazy or whatever, because where I come from, that wasn't an option. You weren't allowed to ask questions, we'll say, but the universe, life, source, whatever you call it, it has a way of pulling you towards your personal truth, even when you try to resist it. And for so many years, I did try to resist it. So I was a Christian, fundamental Christian, actually a Pentecostal Christian, if you're aware of that. It's like very charismatic, and like it's kind of like the most new agey form of Christianity there is, but also extremely dogmatic and critical of other ways of thinking. So there was no room for any of this bullshit that I talk about now. The reality is, I went a long way in church, by the way. My wife's father is a pastor, so we were both very involved in church and all that sort of stuff. And I even went to Bible college and studied this inside and out. And I never had like a specific crisis of faith or like a one moment of disillusionment, but I always had a lot of questions, and questions that I didn't feel comfortable asking. Um, like I always knew God was real, but this God that they painted the picture of, like this pissed off man in the sky, like watching everything going on and being angry at his children that he loves, but if they don't listen to him, they'll go burn forever and ever. That didn't really make any sense to me. And questions like that, even after studying in Bible college and seminary and even secular university and all these courses, it never added up. It never made sense. It's like just something that you're supposed to blindly believe without asking questions. And that's not how my brain functions. If you watch the channel at all, I need to ask questions. Like that's the main point of my life, is to question everything and dig into whatever's wherever I'm pulled towards. So I stumbled upon stuff outside of Christianity, and this is only like maybe a year or two ago that I stumbled onto the Law of One. Like this was my first sort of non-biblical life text like that. You know what I mean? And when I read it, I read the whole thing through in like all 5 volumes. It's how it was compiled when I read it. I read all that through in like 2 or 3 days, and I was fucking blown away by it. Like it was good for me at the time because it referenced Christian material. It discussed Jesus. It discussed Yahweh. But it gave a more broad ideology to this. It's not just like this one doctrine that was written to the Jewish people, which is like what the Bible is. It was written to the Jewish people in that culture, in that time, and we read it like 2,000 or 3,000 years later, and we make it, we tell everybody that's like extremely literal and you need to take this word for word, even though it's written to a culture thousands of years ago. This is the kind of bullshit that goes on in Christianity, and why they're like so out of date with the times, and they can't connect with the young people, and churches are dwindling away, and nobody wants to be a part of it because they're like, no, you can't be gay, because that may have been written thousands of years ago, but when you actually look into it, it didn't say that at all. It's like, you can't rape your male slaves or take advantage of them, and we're like, that means you can't be in a homosexual loving partnership with equality and beauty and all that in 2025. You can't be a part of that because of something that was written thousands of years ago. It's really, really stupid. But let's not get into that in this video. Like, I don't want to be hateful to Christianity because that's my roots. Like, that's, and all my family is still a part of it. Even my wife is still a big part of it. And I'm even still a part of it, but I've opened my eyes to so much more of what's going on here in this big picture. Have a sip of your coffee if you got one. I realize that I'm pretty boring to listen to, but this is like a therapy session for me to kind of, discuss how I'm feeling or whatever. But let me just tell you, growing up in the church, in the Pentecostal environment, it's like church every Sunday, twice a Sunday when I was younger, prayer meetings midweek, Bible studies, youth groups, young adults groups. Most of this stuff I actually took my time leading, and look at me now. There are things that I loved about it. Like, I love the connection to the divine, the connection to God. And I've seen miracles take place. Like, I've seen healings. I've been the recipient of healing. I almost died 3 times in my life, and I was healed every time from prayer. And being involved in worship ministry, like, I've seen the beauty of worship and devotion, of surrendering yourself to this Holy Spirit. But then it's like it moves into these unquestionable parts of the faith, like heaven and hell and salvation, Jesus being the only way, and these are things that you're not allowed to question at all. But still, Christianity gave me a really powerful, deep spiritual foundation, but they also tried to put up walls around me that I wasn't allowed to cross. I wasn't even allowed to mention those walls, and that doesn't sit right with me. So questions start to pour in, obviously, once you've been in this path for like 20-something years like I was. Like, why does God seem so different in the Old Testament versus the New Testament? Like, if God is this loving father, he's like this good father, they say, but he sends his children to hell to be tortured and tormented for eternity. That never made sense to me. Like, why do other cultures and religions have their own deep spiritual experiences? And like, if you grew up over in like Asia somewhere and you were a Tibetan Buddhist and you never heard this gospel, but you had your own spiritual devotion that pushed you towards service to others, you didn't worship the Western Christian God, so you will be tormented and tortured for eternity. None of that makes any sense to me, and you can't even ask the question because in these circles where I come from, doubt is equal to danger. If you have doubts, you are in danger of losing your faith. It's something that is so easy to lose. It's so hard to gain and be respected for having that faith in the church, but you can lose it in an instant by asking one question. So I've seen so much hypocrisy and struggles in the church, and eventually I encountered the unknown, the real source, the real nature of the universe. That was the law of one, is what pulled me in and sucked me into this mystical awakening that happened in my life. And I, like, coming from a Christian background, like evangelism is the main thing. Like you're supposed to tell everyone about your faith and like share the good news of the gospel. Well, after I read the Law of One, I tried that same thing. Like I thought I was supposed to like get everybody else to read the Law of One and believe it, and most of them, all of them, just thought I was a fucking nut job for even suggesting such a thing. Um, of course, I know now that it's not my job to like spread this gospel of this one infinite creator. He's more than capable. I still say he because that's how I grew up, in this like monotheistic God man in the sky. I still call it he, even though it's so much bigger than that. The God is more than capable of spreading his own good news. So I really struggled deconstructing from Christianity. You know what it's like if you've deconstructed. It's like, is this what they said would happen? Like, is this the devil deceiving me? But on the other hand, it's like such a beautiful and mystical experience that I'm having. But am I going to hell forever? How can this be wrong if it feels so right? It's this constant struggle, and I still deal with it to this day. I still feel that tension. I still feel like I'm doing something wrong for going this way or whatever, losing my faith. Not that I've lost my faith, I've just opened it up to so much more of what's going on. Like, that's the thing. I never stopped believing in God or source or the ether or whatever you want to call it. Like, I of course still believe in a God. There's so much more going on here, but the thing is, my God, he's not just like this angry man sitting in the sky watching me. He's so much bigger than the Christians allow him to be. He's so much more loving than their loving father. He's so much more accepting and widespread, and through everything I've read, it's like I am not some prodigal child that's like drifted away and making nothing but mistakes, and if I don't do exactly what he says, I'll be tortured for eternity. It's like I and you and all of us are this fragment of this creator. We are the creator. Not that we are God. It's like God is us. In us, we are all fragments of that one infinite creator experiencing itself through this reality. This is like a simulated reality, not like a computer simulation, not like some sort of Matrix type thing. It's a consciousness simulation, the outward consciousness of that one infinite creator, and we all exist as portions of it. We all are it experiencing itself. We are all that which knows thyself. That's the reality of what's going on here. And if you read the Bible with that in mind, you'll understand it makes sense. This is what Jesus was teaching. Jesus says we are to be him, like we are God. You understand, Jesus didn't want us to try to imitate him to a limitation or to the extent that we can before we reach his divinity. He recognized his divinity and he called us to follow suit. He called us to awaken to our inner divinity, that Christ consciousness, that Holy Spirit comforter. Everything that he told us was to be God, to do greater works than him, because he fast forwarded our track to self-knowledge. He came to help us evolve spiritually, and the idea was that we would take that knowledge and evolve even higher than he did. And we all read about the miracles and the crazy stuff that he did here on earth. We are supposed to do greater things, but we're not, because we're like, we can love, we can, whatever, go to church, do all this, but we can't be like Jesus in that way. Well, then why did he say it? And why are we supposed to like take this word of God so literally? Except for when it comes to like his gospels. We're supposed to do everything Paul says in his letters, many of which weren't even written by Paul. It's like blatant plagiarism and whatever. And of course, all these like apocryphal writings and gospels that were not allowed to be included in the Bible because the Vatican completely twisted and changed the Bible to be something that is more promoting of bowing down to an empire and falling in line with orders. we're not allowed to know any of that. Even churches today are not letting us know any of that. It's fucking gatekeeping. It's gatekeeping this ancient knowledge that was supposed to be passed on to us so that we would awaken to our divinity. The Roman Empire did not want anybody waking up to their divinity. The Roman Empire didn't want a society of gods or godlike people, because how do you control that? You don't. We're not supposed to be controlled. We're supposed to be loving and peaceful and harmonious and passionate, but we're not supposed to be under the control of empire. And what exactly is happening in the world today? We are absolutely under the control of the empire. So the law of one blew my mind. This idea that we're evolving towards unity, that we're all this fragments of the same divine source, that was huge for me. It finally made sense to me and told me like my place in the universe, who I am, what I am, why I'm here. It changed my life. It changed everything. Then I moved on to the Bhagavad Gita. It was like a whole different way of seeing devotion. Like, I knew devotion from Christianity, but not this type of devotion. Not understanding the nuances of like karma and dharma and the journey of the soul that we're on. That it's not like YOLO, it's about to be over. No. You have time. You're not in a rush. Do you understand that? You have all the time in the world. It's not a race. Yes, this meat suit will die. Of course. But there will still be chances after that. It's not like the Christians, like, you only have like 70 or 80 years to get your shit together. Otherwise, you're going to be in hell for eternity. Looking up and seeing like what could have been, but no chance to change it. You're fucked forever. That's like the Christian mythos of this day. It's not, if you go back to ancient Christianity, of course, ancient Christianity included reincarnation in it, but whoop, the Vatican took it out because how could you control people that don't fear death? Death has to be feared for you to fall in control. And then, of course, I got to do astrology. Like, I always thought astrology was complete bullshit because in church you're not allowed to know anything about that. But it's not like, I realized it's not like this fruity, was that homophobic for me to say that like that? I meant like light or fluffy or whatever. Not, maybe I should take that out. That's not good for me to say. But also it's not being honest if I take it out. Whatever. Astrology, it's not like this watered down horoscope type stuff. It's an ancient language mapping the cosmic patterns of your life. It's the answer to everything. We know our life's journey if we know our birth chart or natal chart. Then there was tarot. Years ago, actually, when I first graduated college, I kind of fell from my faith before and got into tarot. And my mother, I remember, like, was so sad, crying. Like, eventually, when I snapped out of it, she like took my tarot cards and burned them. It's like some weird. It's more ritualistic than anything I was doing. But when you realize tarot, it's not like fortune telling or like any of this, you know, magic like that. It's a mirror reflecting the deep down archetypes of your consciousness. These archetypes repeat themselves time and time again in these fractal patterns of reality, and the tarot can help us look within to recognize that. That's why it's like when the Bible warns against divination, it's warning against like fortune telling without looking within. It's looking without. When you use these tools, these spiritual technologies, it's not to look out to everything else, it's to look within, to see God within you, to see what's happening. And then I moved on to like Hermeticism, Rosicrucianism, and like these old ancient societies with esoteric wisdom, realizing that they came and buried themselves deep within our Western traditions and were heavily suppressed again by those seeking to dominate and control us, like Gnosticism and things like that. It's all telling us like this is a simulation. We can have control over our outcomes. We don't need to sit there and just have all this shit happen to us. We can affect it. And then I went on my own quest for the historical Jesus. Like, wait a second, he's not like telling us to go to church and stuff. Jesus wasn't a Christian or anything like that. He was a mystic. He was teaching mystical enlightenment, teaching us about consciousness, not just about salvation, not just about church dogma. Jesus never went to church. Jesus showed us a mystical path to follow, not some like dogma to allow to control the rest of your life. And since I've been on this path, like, it's been amazing to wake up to these things, but it's also been lonely because, like, I can't tell anybody about this stuff or I'll be condemned or whatever. And I obviously can't tell my family about it because they're all deep in church dogma and stuff like that. It's a lonely path, and there's also like personal dark night of the soul stress to deal with. Like, when you're deconstructing, it's like, what if I'm wrong? What if this is like the devil deceiving me? Or what if I lose everyone close to me because of this? But then you like weigh that against other things, like realizing that spirituality is so much bigger and deeper and more personal and more amazing than just dogma. And like the experience of the divine is in everything, not just like church on a Sunday morning or traditions or whatever. And all these other traditions, they're not like our competition. They're not people that we need to like tell them the real way, like the truthful way. They're like these beautiful pieces to the same puzzle. Like, it's not about like, oh, you're Buddhist, you need to like leave that and come to my faith. No, it's like, your faith is beautiful, my faith is beautiful. We're all a part of like this same celestial chord that like hums through all faith traditions and all reality. And this weird fucked up way that doesn't make any sense, like, the more that I dig into other traditions that are like forbidden from my childhood, it's like the closer I feel to God. It's like the deeper I would dig into like Tibetan Buddhism or Hinduism or Mysticism or Law of One or any of this stuff. It's like, I've never felt so close to God in my life because I know him. I know that I know him now. I know his real nature. Not this like American white man in the sky that was like fed to me like this. I no longer see God as somebody being out there. I no longer like think of him as a separate anthropomorphic entity. God is something woven into everything. He's here all around us. Truth comes in many forms. Jesus, Krishna, the Hermetic principles, the language of the stars, the archetype, like whatever path you're on, truth is out there. It's like the X-Files. The truth is out there. It's not just in here or in the four walls of the church. It's not like blindly believing anymore. It's shifted from belief to experience. I no longer need to like have the right answer. I can allow myself to live in the mystery, to accept the beauty of this mystery, and to realize the truth of this mystery. It's a paradox. Like, God is personal and impersonal. We know him and we don't know him. Life has destiny and free will. We are both individual and of one consciousness. Like, we're individualized fragments of one giant fractal. It's not that I lost my faith. It's not that I'm like a poor lost soul now. It's like I expanded it beyond the limits I was given my whole childhood. And with that, life is so much more meaningful. Every second of my life is more meaningful. Every second of my life is filled with more happiness than I ever thought personal. Your questions aren't dangerous. They're sacred. It's the universe calling to you. You're allowed to ask questions. Spirituality isn't about clinging to certainty. It's about learning to navigate the unknown. I used to think that leaving Christianity meant losing God, but the truth is, God was never something I could lose, only something I could see more clearly. Truth isn't about choosing one path over another, it's not about being on that right path. It's about realizing all these paths are connected. They're all one path. There is only one path to know thyself. So I thank you guys for being on this journey. Like, I I've got more questions than answers. I'm not some guru here trying to like teach you and tell you the way. I'm realizing this at the same time as you. I just want to share the experience. This is like my diary. So if you're on a similar path, subscribe or whatever. Like, come along this journey with me and let's dive into the unknown together. Let's awaken to the power that we really are, to the reality of our um, one connectedness with this one infinite creator. Uh, anyway, thank you so much for being a part of this with me. God love you. Even one view is like a big deal for me because it's like someone to talk to. That is so like, I don't know, weird to say that like that, but you guys are amazing. Thank you so much. Let's chat. We'll see you very soon, hopefully. Goodbye.